You guys ready to get going? That didn't sound very ecstatic. Yeah, I could be like one of those hype guys, like, I can't hear you.
I love learning.
Like Hulk Hogan. No? Alright, well, let's try it again. You guys ready? Yes. That's great. Geez, you see the stupid things people do as long as you ask them. That's great. Isn't this a great picture? Oh yeah, if I had this shirt, I would wear it every day. So this is what we're going to talk about today. Meaning. Symbols. Why do symbols mean what they mean? And what are symbols? Furthermore, how do we communicate? This is kind of the groundwork or the framework for what we're going to discuss later in the semester. This will give you a good foundation. So we're going to start with a simple question. What is communication? Geez, sounds like a simple question anyways, but who wants to take a stab at defining this term?
It's the way two things interact with each other.
Two things interacting. Okay, good.
The art of conversation.
The art of conversation.
Expression or self-expression.
Expression or something. You guys are good. You're doing a great job of pinpointing aspects of communication. That's not quite telling the whole story, and that's okay.
The process by which individuals use
I see your eyes. Well, read it. The camera, I'll catch it.
symbols, signs, and behaviors to exchange information.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Came up with that myself.
No. Now, you all heard that definition, which came straight from the book.
No.
Who could recite that word for word after having heard it one time? Nobody.
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
Yeah, well, and that's the problem with those types of definitions. You lose one word because you kind of drift, and then you're gone. So let me give you an easier definition for the term communication. How's this? Negotiating symbolic meaning. That's 3 easy words. So if I were to ask you on a test, what is communication? This is a heck of a lot easier to remember than that other thing that came from your book, isn't it? Yeah. And by the way, this came from another textbook. Interesting thing about the communication discipline and the social sciences in general is there are no concrete correct answers to everything. There's just good guesses. And so every communication textbook that you read will define communication a little bit differently. They'll all be in the same ballpark. But throughout the years, this is the easiest one I've ever found. It's just 3 words. But those 3 words need a little bit more description. Specifically, this word symbol and this word meaning. So that's where we're going to start. What are symbols and what are meaning? What is meaning? What are symbols and what is meaning? Well, we'll start here with symbols, which are words, vocalisms, movements, pictures, etc. Anything that represents a concept. Here's my definition down here. An abstract object that represents a concept. I'll give you a second to write that down if you want. These definitions may seem a little bit vague and out there. So I'm going to show you some pictures that should help clarify what it is that we're talking about. If it's confusing, hopefully we'll clear it up right here. I'm going to show you 3 different pictures, and I want you to tell me exactly what it is we are looking at on a purely physical level, and then we'll discuss what the concept is that's represented by the picture. Good? We'll start with this one.
Wedding rings.
Wedding rings. Okay, that's good. A little too far, though.
Marriage.
Way too far.
Diamond.
Engagement? Still too far.
Diamond?
Yeah, a little closer. Yeah, actually a lot closer.
Gems?
Well, what we are really looking at here is a circular piece of metal formed into a circle about like yay. And on top of that circle is a very expensive rock. That's what we've got. Metal and rocks. That's really what these are on a purely physical level. Now, these don't always have to be rocks like diamonds. They can be plastic as well. But for the most part, it's just metal and rocks, man. That's what they are. But what do we more commonly call these things?
Wedding rings.
Wedding rings. Sounds a lot more romantic than
Rings.
metal and rock. That's a good metal and rock that you've got there. Oh, we call these things wedding rings, right? And what is the concept that's represented by the wedding ring?
Marriage.
Bond. Everlasting bond.
You guys are going a bit too far on me still. I heard someone say wedding or marriage, right? The concept is marriage. When you see somebody with these on their left ring finger, that tells you that that person is married, right? But not always. My sister used to wear what I call the fake 'em out wedding ring.
That's
Ladies,
sneaky.
heard of this? You know what I'm talking about? You buy these nice rings, they cost like $10, and they look like a legitimate wedding ring. So when she used to go out, she's like, I just don't want dudes bothering me. So she put on the fake 'em out wedding ring and just kind of just left it out anywhere on a table. So when people saw it, they would just decide to go to greener pastures because she was taken. Now some people take that as a challenge, so they're like all in. Derek?
Yeah, I was going to say that usually having a wedding ring on, and if they're alone at a bar, usually means something different than they're taking.
Oh, hey.
They're actually presenting themselves as a challenge.
Oh, hey, that's good. I like that. I've never heard that viewpoint, but I can see where you're absolutely right. That's good. We're going to move on to the next one. Mixed object. What is this we're looking at?
Plastic.
Tree plastic.
Ah, yes. Yes, now, we would probably say, oh, that's a Christmas tree. But that's what this is, but it really isn't what it is. Confused yet? No, me too. If I had to guess, I would say that this Christmas tree is just like the one that I use in my house every Christmas, which is stored in a box in my garage and is folded up into this shape that never quite fits back into the box that it came in. Then it comes out and you bend the branches because they're made of metal and plastic. Yeah. What do you think? Do you think this looks like a real tree or fake?
Fake.
Probably fake. And the reason I guess that, well, a few things. Trees that exist in nature are never really this symmetrical. Like there's a random branch out here, some bulby thing, and they're really not this full. This is way too perfect to be a nature tree. And trees that exist in nature also have trunks and not metal. But that's just my guess. This one is decorated with a bunch of garland and bows and things like that. So we would call this a Christmas tree, but it's not even a tree at all. Is it? No, absolutely not. But Christmas tree is what it is. And what's the concept that's represented by the Christmas tree?
Religion.
Holiday.
Put your presents under it.
Celebration.
Well, you
Drinking.
guys are, it's not that you're wrong, you're just thinking too far. We're going to get there in a second. Just let's take a smaller step and say that the Christmas tree represents the concept of Christmas. Would you all agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, does anyone want to disagree? Because you're more than welcome to.
I would if I could.
Would if you could, yeah. And this is the thing with concepts, symbols and concepts. We pretty much always have universal agreement to what the concept is that's represented by the symbol. So nobody is arguing that this represents Christmas, just like nobody's really arguing that this represents marriage. One more. What's that?
Cross.
Paint.
Crucifix.
Color.
A T.
There we go. What we're looking at here is two black lines intersected perpendicularly. We've got a long line going vertical and a smaller line going horizontally, with the horizontal crossbar located slightly askance. Does that work? I don't even know if that's the right context, but whatever. Located above the center point. That's really, it's just two black lines, man. That's about all we got here. But what would we call this?
Cross.
A cross or a T. Depends on the context. If this was surrounded by a bunch of other letters, then it would be a T.
Or on Sesame Street.
If this was located on a church, this would be religious. And it's the same thing, it just takes on a different meaning depending on the context. So let's just say that this is a cross. What is the concept represented by a cross?
Jesus.
Yeah, I'd say Jesus, or use more global terms, religion. Religious faith-based system of beliefs. But not all religions or all faiths use the cross. So maybe this is just more of a Christianity, Catholicism type symbol. But anyways, moving on. Let's now discuss meaning. And meaning is the significance of that concept. And what we find with meaning is this is where things get really individualized. Everybody tends to have a different idea of what meaning should be, depending on the object. And a lot of things shape that. Your past experiences, what you've been through in life, your upbringing, your environment. We're all products of our environment and our experiences, and that shapes our meaning. So, whereas concepts are fairly universal, meaning is so personal and individualized. We'll get a ton of different answers. For example, if we start with this, we all agreed that the wedding ring represented the concept of marriage, correct? Yeah. So, next question. What does marriage mean?
Slavery.
Oh boy. Anyone want to get caught on camera saying what they really think? Let's go. Come on.
Commitment.
Commitment. Very good. Who said that? Oh, okay. Bud. Good. You just saying that because your parents are there?
No, I actually believe it.
Okay, good.
Risk.
What'd you say?
Risk.
Risk.
Hey, you laugh, but
What else?
Family.
Trust.
Huh?
Family.
Family.
Trust.
Torture.
Trust. Torture. See, we're going to have so many different ideas as to what marriage really means here.
Okay.
Raise your hand if you've never been married. Okay, so all of you folks that just raise your hand, maybe you're hanging on to those kind of romanticized ideals. That marriage is a thing that happens when you find the person that you're madly in love with, the love of your life. And then you get married and life becomes so much better as a result, and every day is better than the last. It's beautiful. And maybe that happens for some people, but we know for a fact that that doesn't happen with everybody. The thing is, we can have these romanticized ideals if we haven't learned that other things can happen. So now, without asking you guys to self-incriminate too much, if you feel comfortable sharing, how many of you have been burned on a bad marriage? Come out the other side and you've got the scars to prove it, but you're here to tell the tale. Okay, quite a few hands up for this one too. You probably have a much different definition of what marriage means. For you, marriage might be a time for you to sit back and now say, wait a second, I screwed it up once. Or someone else screwed it up for me once. So I got to be a lot more picky with who I choose to spend the rest of my life with. But you also know that maybe it's not a lifelong thing. We all hope it is. But all of our past experiences will shape what meaning turns out to be. Now, if we were to ask an elderly couple what the meaning of marriage is, you would probably get something along the lines of what my grandparents believed. I use the words traditional and old-fashioned, although I don't know if those words really apply to this. But they would say that marriage is a process of compromise, where you find someone you love and want to spend the rest of your life with, and things won't always be bright rays of sunshine. You will have your hard times. You've just got to get through them. And when you come out the other side, hopefully you are stronger because of it, but you are constantly learning about the other person as you go through life. And for them, marriage was not something that you ever gave up on. It's like you married one person, and if you realized within 3 or 4 years that you just weren't into it, then you just kind of toughed it out. That's kind of that old traditional way of thinking, where marriage is a one-time deal, lifelong commitment. And this is way different than something that maybe Reverend Lovejoy from The Simpsons may tell you. Although I don't, it's just kind of a funny picture to put up. I don't exactly know what he would say. I do, however, know what this guy would say. What does marriage mean to a guy like Tiger Woods?
Nothing.
But maybe there's nothing sacred about it. And we're all talking about the same concept. It's still marriage, but different ways to approach it.
He could have changed.
Oh, yeah, well.
Means he's a billionaire.
Yes. Although he lost about half his money.
Hell yeah.
So, I've got quite a few friends who have been married for a few years, and then they realized that they just were not compatible with the person that they married. And so they divorced. And I don't know, maybe this is more of a current modern era thing, where it's like, just move on to the next one. It's like taking this class. If it doesn't work, then try a different class, right? We're all talking about the same concepts, just different ways to approach it. So, just like this guy, our dear friend, oh gosh, what's his name?
Tiger Woods.
No, I'm not thinking about this guy. This guy. Paul McCartney.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, poor Paul McCartney. Geez, how many millions of dollars did he lose in his divorce? 500 and some $million.
He's got billions.
Yeah. He still has a lot of money, but geez, talk about losing your... Whoops. Guy lost a lot of money. So maybe marriage for him is a thing that you just don't do because you lose half of your stuff when it goes south. I don't know. I've never been married myself, so I don't exactly know where I stand on that either. But my parents have been married my whole life, so I've kind of got that experience to go off of.
Who's ahead of his time then when money can't buy you love?
He was ahead of his time, wasn't he? Bought him love for a few years. It cost him a lot. That's expensive love, man. $512 million. I would have bought an Xbox. That's just me. Sometimes it's not only a matter of what we believe personally, it's a matter of what the state or the government tells us meaning should be. And in the case of marriage, we do have a fairly heavy-handed definition passed down to us from the Supreme Court that tells us exactly what marriage is from a legal perspective. And whether we agree or disagree with that really doesn't matter, because we have to live underneath the system until it changes. So go about changing the system however you want. But definitions come at us from all over the place. Let's go to this one. We all agree that the Christmas tree represented the concept of Christmas. So same question, what does Christmas mean?
The joy of giving.
The joy of giving.
Family.
Family.
The joy of receiving.
The joy, yes. The joy of receiving.
Birth of Christ.
Being growth.
Birth of Christ. Who said that? Okay, Michael, good. You know, Christmas is one of those things that started off as a religious-based holiday, Christianity-based. The birth of Christ, well, the date was kind of picked arbitrarily, coincided with the winter solstice. I think historians have tried to pinpoint the exact birth date of when they thought Jesus was born, and they think it was sometime in the spring or the summer. So it's like you just kind of just pick an arbitrary date. December 25th, sounds good. You vote yes, yes, yes. All in favor? Aye. All right, Christmas. That's set. You get to pick your own birthdays. I wish I could pick my own birthday, because it would be tonight. Not today, just tonight. So yeah, it did start off as a religious-based holiday, but where is it now?
Everywhere.
It depends on who you
It's a
are.
marketing ploy for all the products that we purchase every year to increase the economy of our system.
Yeah, I heard that this year
and what you're really
they sold
saying
less
there,
in
Alan,
December
is-
than the rest of the months.
What's that?
I heard this year that like in December the sales didn't go up in like most of the US.
Oh, they didn't, huh? Yeah, I didn't. I used to study this stuff a lot because I was in the advertising business. But what you're really saying, Alan, boils down to one word: consumerism. All about consumerism. That's kind of what Christmas is now. So although for some people there is still that religious side, there are many other people who aren't religious at all that still participate in the holiday. For example, myself, I come from a family that's not exactly overly religious at all. But I love me some Christmas, man. That is awesome. That's tops. That's the best holiday you could ever get. Christmas. Love it. But for me, that doesn't have a whole lot of religious significance. For me, it's a chance to get together with the whole family. You have this big meal, and you just buy a bunch of presents that you can't afford, and you spend money that you would probably rather save, but you get to see the smiles on people's faces when you give them something that you bought. Right? That's kind of what Christmas is for me. What that means to the consumerist side of the world, all the CEOs of major corporations, is this is a great time to make money. This should come as no surprise that the 10 biggest shopping days of the entire year are all revolved around Christmas. So Black Friday, December 23rd is also a big day. There's Cyber Monday. You've got 1 month just packed full of money. And that's kind of what Christmas has come to for a lot of people, right? Just consumerism. So meanings they're constantly changing. If you were to ask the Pope, I think this is the old Pope, John Paul, he would probably give you a very religious, philosophical, theosophical version of what Christmas means, because he's a man with a cloth, and that's where he's coming from. But if you were to ask this guy, also a man of the cloth, just a different cloth, you would get a way different answer. It would be very religious and theosophical and philosophical, just like the Pope, but a way different answer. Furthermore, if you ever ask a kid what the meaning of Christmas is, Santa Claus, baby, come on. You guys remember when you were kids, you had those chains? Pull off one thing for every day. Oh, I love Christmas when I was a kid. How many of you have kids that are in that Christmas age of like 4 to 10? That's kind of that magical time for kids. Oh, isn't it crazy? Oh, they're just nuts in a good way. And then you can threaten them. It's a great excuse for parents to threaten their kids into good behavior. Oh, you can't do that. Santa's watching. I'm going to take you through some other symbols that we use on a daily basis that really affect how we live our lives. So same exercise here. I want you to identify what's happening from a purely physical level, and then we'll move into concepts and meaning. Beginning with this one.
Blue ink.
Bathroom.
Piece of plastic on the wall.
Hey, there we go. Okay. What we've really got here are two blue shapes, rectangular shapes, and inside that are these white things. It's like a fork that didn't quite make it. With a floating circle on the top of it. But we don't call these forks and circles. What would we more appropriately refer to these as?
Bedroom signs.
Male and female.
Gender signs. And where do we see these things?
All over the restroom.
Yeah, predominantly in the restrooms. And what's interesting is you will oftentimes see these symbols without the words that go along with them. So it won't say man, and it won't say woman. It will just be the symbol. And you are responsible for knowing which one is which. So pop quiz, hot shots. Which one's the man, which one's the woman?
Left is man, right is woman.
Left is the man, right is the woman. How many of you agree? A lot of people just aren't disagree. You can disagree if you want. So why is this the man?
Not wearing a dress, Jim.
He's not wearing a dress. And see how we gender fight it already? He's not wearing a dress. So let's look at this one. What about this picture says dress?
He's wearing a dress.
He's wearing a dress. It's got this triangle shape. Yeah, there's a triangle. What kind of dress looks like this? Judy Jetson? In 1955? Oh, seriously. And by the way, that's a very high-rising dress. So, I mean, that's got to be a really short skirt that sticks straight out. Let's just do a quick experiment. I want all the ladies in the class just to stand up. We're not
Now
going
everyone
to
check 'em
gawk
out.
at you. We're just going to look at you from the waist down. That sounded creepy. I didn't mean it that way. What are all the ladies in this class wearing? Oh my gosh, it's a Christmas miracle. Pants. And not only pants, but blue jeans. All except one. Two. All except two.
Wrong with you.
Blue jeans. Denim jeans, right? Okay, sit down. Very good. I want all the guys to stand up. We're going to gawk at you for a second now, too. The waist down. What are all the guys wearing? Oh, jeans. Jeans. Blue denim jeans. With a couple exceptions. But pants, right? Now go ahead and sit down, guys. Was anybody in this class wearing a dress? No, not a single person.
We're all male.
That's too bad.
Furthermore, was anybody wearing anything that stuck out like this? No. Everyone was wearing jeans.
So we're all males.
Couldn't this symbol stand for everybody in this room? So why
With nice
is
broad
this veil?
shoulders.
Broader shoulders.
Broader
Things are
shoulders?
massive.
Could be. Isn't that interesting, though? Somewhere along the lines, we determined that only men wear pants. All women wear dresses. And now we operate by this symbol regardless of how outdated it is.
Back to the 50s.
Yes.
Okay, here's a random fact. In the 1800s, pants didn't exist, so men and women all wore dresses all the time.
Or togas.
I like that. So these symbols are much more recent than then. All right. But
Also
they're...
on crosswalks, the male figure is only represented in the lit up signal.
Oh, absolutely.
Girls will wait.
You run across them.
So what does that tell you? That if we operate on these symbols exclusively, then only men can cross the street. Oh, that's great. You know what, though? Hey, it is what it is. We all know that that's man and that's woman, and we see these things on bathrooms. And what happens if you're a man and you go into this bathroom? Oh,
There's nowhere to stand up.
anything can happen. Best case scenario is you get very embarrassed, turn around, cheeks blushing, you look around, hope nobody saw you, and you scamper off to the men's bathroom. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is you get arrested.
Or you get this stuff thrown at you.
You can, you can get stuff thrown at you, shoes, purses, toilet paper wads, or anything else. But yes, you can be arrested for going into the wrong bathroom. And I had a police officer, it's a nice way to say it, in my class I taught last night, and he verified this. Yes, it is an arrestable offense. Although he said most police officers would never actually go that far. According to the letter of
this
the
is
law,
Boise.
you could arrest somebody for going into the wrong bathroom. The charge is like lewd conduct or something. I don't know. Sexual deviancy or something. Anyway, so big consequences for not knowing the right symbol. But these are so universal that you could go to a different country, find the same symbols, and you don't have to speak that other country's language to know which bathroom is yours. Next symbol. What's this?
The sign.
A red metal pole with a horse.
What we've really got here is two black objects. This one is kind of an arrow, almost, kind of missing that left-hand side. This is either a sideways J or a horseshoe shape. That's the best way I can explain it. Two completely separate objects. Now your mind is going to fill in the gaps and draw the inference that it should all be connected to create the letter P. But that's your brain filling in gaps that are placed in front of you. You're jumping to conclusions here. But we'll say that that's the letter P. This circle with a line through it, what does that mean?
No.
That means no, bad. Santa's watching. Whatever is underneath this line, you can't do. But forget about it.
Can't eat.
No.
You
You
can't.
can't. Yeah, so why does this P, if we want to call it a P, why does it stand for parking? And there's probably 5,000 words that begin with the letter P. We chose parking. Why doesn't it just say parking with a line through it?
Or no
Well,
parking.
it's because that's the symbol that we've created, and that's the meaning that we've attached to it. So much that it's in your driver's handbook. If you violate this symbol, you could get anywhere from a $15 ticket to a boot on your car to towed to the wrecking yard or to the impound lot where it costs $300 to get your car out. Big consequences for not following these symbols. And nowhere on here does the thing say no parking. You just need to know the symbol. It's a whole other language. What's this one?
Recycle.
Recycle. Yeah. Oh yeah. If we want to go back to the beginning, yes, it's just a bunch of shapes that are green, like a nub.
Triangle.
Yeah. What's the concept here?
Recycling.
Recycling. Okay, very good. Bravo. Give yourselves a round of applause. You succeeded. Very good. I'm going to give you some more now. And these ones are going to be much more historical in nature. Some of these go back thousands and thousands of years. Now, I'll warn you right now that these symbols I'm going to show right now may raise a bigger emotional response out of you. And that's okay if it does. Ready? Beginning with this one. What are we looking at here?
Swastika.
A swastika. Yeah, that's what we would call it right now. But what is it really? Well, gosh, it's a red backdrop with a white circle inside. And inside the white circle is black lines. And they all have 90-degree angles. So it's a bunch of concentric 90-degree angles. Right there. And it's all pointed in what looks like to be a clockwise direction. That's really what this is. It's a simple geometric pattern. Been around for a long time. But now the meaning is way, way, way different. So what would you think if you were to see this, say, on the back of somebody's car windshield?
White supremacists.
We read them off the road.
White supremacist, somebody who hates people. And what are the meanings that are associated with the swastika in 2012?
White power.
Racism.
Hate
White power, hate,
Anti-Semitism.
anti-Semitism. A lot of the other answers I typically get are extreme prejudice, racism, death, torture, genocide, Holocaust. There's a laundry list of definitions we can throw on this thing, and none of them are good. They're all bad connotations. And the interesting thing about this particular symbol is it actually dates back over 5,000 years ago. Some of the earliest usages were in ancient India, 3300 BC. What people have figured the swastika originally meant was well-being. That's peaceful, isn't it? Well-being. Sounds like I gotta meditate and get a massage. Maybe have some comfort food and watch movies. That's good for my well-being. That's not what the swastika means now, is it? No, it's a long ways from well-being. But 3300 is 3300 BC, where we start finding this thing. In fact, it's still used today in East Asia. And it still represents those concepts of well-being and those derivations of well-being. So love, everlasting life, peace, joy, harmony, anything you can see from like a clockwise motion that just keeps going and going and going. All about peace in some cultures. Not here in America. In fact, it's pretty much anti-peace here in America in 2012. But here in America, that's only come about during the last 80, 90 years or so. Because we don't have to go too far back in time to find usages with Native American cultures. The Navajos were notorious for using the swastika. Here's a picture taken in 1909. Native American basketball team had the swastika on their jersey. Just like a basketball team will do now, only now they'll say Chicago Bulls, or Kings, or Clippers, or whatever. But
when it's turned to swastika, when it's like that, it's actually pronounced swastika, I believe.
oh, like
Because there's
this.
no W if you go back.
Whoops. Like that.
Yeah, said swastika rather than swastika.
Oh, okay. Well, there, okay, yeah. So that's a picture from 1909. These guys here were wearing that symbol prior to the change in meaning. And that big change in meaning happened in 1920. About 1920 to 1945. When Adolf Hitler took power and started adopting this symbol as the unifying symbol of Nazi Germany. And the interesting thing was, he knew the original meaning of the swastika. Well-being, peace, harmony. He thought that that's what he was fighting for. His version of peace and harmony is way, way different than anybody else. Horrible things happen for his fight for well-being. And as a result of that, this symbol has been changed so massively that now when we see it, we don't think about peace anymore, do we? That's the farthest thing from your mind. Totally the opposite. Now when we see this thing, we think hate, racism, torture, death, anti-Semitism, the whole gamut. Which really shows you the power of one person in the world. This one guy took 5,000 years worth of peaceful definitions on one symbol and changed it all over the course of 25 years. And now I guarantee you that this symbol is so changed that it will never go back to being a symbol of peace. Not in our lifetimes anyways, and I feel very confident in guaranteeing that. What do you guys think? Yeah. Can that ever change at this point?
For certain people.
For certain people, yeah.
Like a group.
If you're not in America.
Mm-hmm. Or if you're not in America, yeah, sure.
Because originally that, back in the native times, represented the 4, or the actual 5 elements of peace. Earth, wind, fire, air, and the center would be the human being. It's the culmination of all 4 things.
Okay. Yeah.
Just a little tidbit.
Yeah, and that's great. I would venture to say, though, now that if we saw this tattooed on somebody, we wouldn't think, hey, there's a guy who's into Native American culture. We'd probably say, ah, jeez. Right? Here's another fun one. What are these?
Confederate flags.
The Confederate flags. Yeah. And what's the meaning behind the Confederate flag right now in 2012?
Also one word.
The South,
Confederate
maybe
States of
and,
America.
Hey, this is going to be so different depending on where you grew up, what your family was like. Jeremy from Texas, you're going to have a good interpretation of this here in just a second. Well, I'll call on you in just a
From
moment.
southern Mississippi.
And who was from or going to South Carolina? Okay.
It's still waving on the.
We're going to get there here in just a moment. So the Confederate flag, if you don't know the history, I'll give you just a little bit of a background. One picture's worth of background. It was the unifying symbol of the Confederacy during the Civil War. 4-year war, 1861 to 65. We had the Union, which was flying what is now the only American flag, and then we had the Confederacy, which was flying their version of the flag. And obviously both sides were fighting for different things. But nowadays, when a lot of people see the Confederate flag, they see another sign of racism, or prejudice, or bigotry of some sort. And that's not necessarily what the user or the wearer intends. Back in the mid-'80s, when I was growing up, used to watch this show called The Dukes of Hazzard all the time. And they had this awesome car called the General Lee. And on top of it was the Confederate flag. And I always told my parents, I said, when I get older and have a car, I'm painting it just like that. Because I just thought it was cool. When you're a kid, you just look at things and you say, oh, that's awesome. I want to do that when I grow up. And so I always wanted to have a Confederate flag on top of my car. And for a long time, this was kind of this symbol of anti-establishment rebelliousness. Like, you can't tell me what to do, I'll do my own thing. I'm a rebel. Had nothing to do with racism. Had everything to do with this kind of a rebel spirit. Now, for some people, the Confederate flag represents a tradition of being from the South. Now, the South is an interesting place. Jeremy, you're from there. How many of you have traveled to the South or have grown up down there? Okay. Whole different world, isn't it? And Texas especially. Man, it's like a different country. You step into Texas and there's so much pride, it'll just blow your mind. Like, I've never seen such state pride as I found in Texas. With Idaho, you don't get that. Like, no one says, I'm proud to be an Idahoan. But in Texas, that's like the first word out of everybody's mouth. You introduce yourself, hi, I'm Matt. Oh, hi, I'm John, proud to be a Texan. Okay. All right. So there's this rich history and a pride that goes along with the South. And for a lot of people, the Confederate flag represents that pride. It has nothing to do with racism or the Civil War. It has everything to do with Southern pride. Two wildly different trains of thought here. Here's what happened recently. 1962. South Carolina hoists up the Confederate flag above the state capitol. It went American flag, state flag, Confederate flag. Just like that. This is a picture from the South Carolina Capitol Dome. Almost 40 years it flew on top of there. And the reason it went up, well, I don't know the reason. It was 1962. That was the Civil Rights era. So times were a lot different. But people got very upset that that flag was on top of the Capitol. Because they would say, hey, the state capitol should represent the best interests of everybody who lives here. It should be all about equality. And by flying that Confederate flag over the top of the Capitol, you are saying that you're not concerned about equality because you're racist. Was that the intent? Doubtful. But you can see how people would come to that conclusion. And again, all these meanings are going to be very, very individualized. And you could say, well, maybe people are jumping to conclusions. It's all personalized. We all come to different meanings. Here's what happened. Year 2000, lawmakers passed a bill to remove the flag from the state capitol. Maybe we were tired of dealing with it, or they had a change of heart. I don't know what happened. But they decided they're going to take it down off the Capitol and move it to the north lawn of the State House. So they moved it from there all the way over here, which is maybe 200 yards away. So tell me this, riddle me this, Batman. By moving the flag from there to here, is that a meaningful gesture, or is it kind of a hollow gesture?
I think it's meaningful.
Meaningful? And why so, Mike?
Well, because it's not above the Capitol building anymore.
Not above the Capitol.
I think that makes a big difference, that move right there.
It probably does. And furthermore, right now it's in front of a Civil War monument to honor these fallen Confederate soldiers. So now it's more of a memorial type thing rather than a pride thing. So yeah, the context has definitely changed.
They would fly the Confederate flag at my elementary schools in Mississippi.
Would they really?
Everyone. And they fly it in front of the Capitol. I don't know if it's on top of the Capitol, but they fly it in front of it. And they down on the beach, there'd be like all these different flags and big Confederate flags.
Huh.
It's not racist down there, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's a whole different world down there. Yeah, the meanings are just so much different than what we would think here in the Treasure Valley. Derek?
I could say that would be a hollow statement. Mm-hmm. Is that when it was on top of the Capitol, it meant something to a lot of people. Flying over memorials, just a constant reminder that they lost.
Yeah, perhaps. Rubbing it in someone's face, I don't know.
There's like a thing in front of it that explains why it was moved and like the fallen. It shows like its history. It explains that it's their history now, and it was moved over there.
Okay, so that they've gone a long ways in explaining the move, and we could say, hey, this is great gesture, perhaps, that now it's not necessarily a state flag, but kind of a memorial. Well, here's the thing. The NCAA, which would be the National Collegiate Athletic Association, they govern all college sports. They thought, it's kind of a hollow gesture, my friends. South Carolina, nice try. But until you remove that flag entirely from the State House grounds, you will not be allowed to host any postseason championship game in your entire state.
That's messed up.
It's the NCAA, man. So they're saying, hey, I don't care if you move the flag from the top of the Capitol to the north lawn. As long as it's there, you will not have any postseason championship games in your state. And you know what that means for an economy? That's a huge, significant blow. There's a ton of money wrapped up into college bowl games, basketball championships, like consumerism money, tourism, all that stuff. It does wonders for an economy. Even our little Idaho Potato Bowl over here does some good things for us. These guys can't have it. And so guess what South Carolina has said as a result of this? They said, okay. No championship games? Well, whatever. We won't have them. Don't want them. Don't want them, don't need them. What we need is that flag. To which head coach of the football team, Steve Spurrier, started calling it that damn flag. Because he is not allowed to have any championship games in his state because that flag is there.
They should take it off the lawn and put it on their uniforms.
Well, that might be a workaround. I assume that the NCAA would also have problems with that. So Steve Spurrier doesn't like it. Go a little bit further. This just happened 2 years ago. The ACC, Atlantic Coast Conference, decided to yank 3 entire basketball tournaments out of the state of South Carolina due to the flag. So we've got wildly different viewpoints, and it all boils down to a flag. And what is a flag?
Flag.
Well, it's a piece of canvas, probably, that's painted in a particular pattern. So the American flag has the colors red, white, and blue on a piece of canvas. Confederate flag has the colors red, white, and blue on a piece of canvas. It's just painted differently, and so the meaning is much more powerful. If you were to take a piece of blank canvas, like just go down to the craft store, buy a huge piece of unpainted canvas, just beige, take it out to the lawn and stomp on it and roll around on it and then set it on fire, people might just think you're crazy and try to run out with the fire extinguisher. Now you take that same piece of canvas, painted like the American flag, and go out there and stomp on it and set it on fire, and you are going to suffer some serious consequences. Not legal consequences, but consequences from your own
mob
peers. Yeah. and what's different about that flag versus the piece of canvas? Well, it's painted a certain way. Does that painting have any power? Well, the flag doesn't do anything, really. It's just this object. But it's the meaning that we give the flag that becomes very, very powerful. Let's move on to this one. What's this?
Pentagram.
A pentagram. Yes. And we call it a pentagram because penta means 5, and gram, diagram, is a 5-pointed object. And what would you think if you saw someone with this hanging out of their bedroom window today?
Well, it depends on which way it's turned, because that way supposedly represents Satanism. Turned the other way is Wicca, which is totally opposite.
So let's discuss that. If it's the same thing, it's just its orientation is changing.
Because it's supposed to represent a ram that's upside down, and the top's supposed to be the horns.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to be the eyes, and then.
Absolutely. We'll get there and just, man, this whole family over here, you guys are on the ball. Who would say that this star is upside down? Some half-hearted hands. Yes, it's not. You think I'm asking trick questions?
It looks kind of sideways.
I kind of am. Who would say that it's right side up? All right. Well, interestingly enough,
Slightly tilted.
Slightly. You can use my word, askance.
Askance. Well, you know the Pentagon is the pentagram.
Mm-hmm. Because 5 points. 5 points on that
You
little.
have to just put the thing on it.
Check this out. Here I've drawn a square. Tell me, is that square upside down or right side up?
It's wrong.
Ah.
It's upside down. It's upside down.
Well, it's obviously upside down. Jeez, can't you see that? Yeah. Well, who tells us what is right side up and upside down for a star?
Tradition.
Tradition. Yeah, because this is not the way I was taught to draw a star in 2nd grade. Because I drew it like this, and the top point was pointing up. So that's got to be right. Anything else is wrong. It's upside down. Well, come on. Who tells us all this stuff? Somehow we buy along with it, though. This particular diagram is another one of those simple geometric patterns. Has also been around for about 5,000 years. This one dates back to Mesopotamia, so 3000 BC. And it's just like the swastika, these exist in many, many ancient cultures because they're just geometric patterns. They're easy to draw and carve into rocks. Somewhere along the lines, this particular symbol got branded as a sign of the occult or Satanism. And the reason is this, because, so the saying goes, that if you've got a single point that's pointing up, then it is thought to be pointing towards heaven. It's celestial. But if the single point is pointing down, then it's thought to be pointing directly to hell. That's where you're going. And you got in here the face of a goat. Ears, horns, chin. So that's good. This is bad. It's the same symbol. It's just oriented differently. And more recently, this has become rather embraced by Satanists. In fact, so much that there's even a Church of Satan. Did you guys know this?
I did not.
Church of Satan. And they have nifty posters that look like this that say, "Join now." It's like you're going to a Tupperware party or a Cincy party. Hey, we're going to go down to the old Satanist thing. They're having a potluck. We're going to take home some samples, read the literature, whatever. Some people might come by and try to hardball us in. But they're going to have this party, and there's going to be girls in bikinis with red skin.
Yes.
And all the guys, this kind of looks like a happening place to be, doesn't it? The guys wear these snappy coats and walk around with canes and hats. Like, man, that's the party I want to go to. But anyways, Church of Satan, literature, propaganda there. Hey, even if you're not into this stuff, doesn't mean that you can't still have a pentagram. Because maybe you just like heavy metal music. I'm a big fan of heavy metal. I was raised on the stuff, and I was doing this since the time I was about 6 years old. Had no idea what I was doing. That's just, what we did, listen to heavy music. So sometimes we start using the symbols and it has no bearing on the meaning that a lot of people ascribe to it. So moral of this story is that symbols themselves contain no power at all. Symbols are just these things. Where the power comes from is the meaning that is ascribed to that symbol. And who creates meaning? We do.
The masses.
All of us, the masses. We all create meaning. So we just come up with these objects and then say, well, that means this. And we go along with it. Okay, let's change thoughts a little bit. I'm going to give you a couple of models of communication. Now, the actual study of communication dates back 2,000 years ago to biblical times. But it wasn't until 1948 that someone decided that they would actually try to draw a diagram of the way the communication process works. Why did it take 2,000 years? I don't know. Maybe people had better things to do with their time than draw communication models. But anyways, in 1948, we get something called the linear model of communication. Linear means line. It's where you've got a sender who sends a message, or in this word, channel, but sender, message, receiver. Anybody remember their high school communication class? One hand. Did you learn this thing?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what did your teacher say? Is this like, this is the way communication happens?
Yeah, it was a debate class, so she was real into it.
Just this?
She loved it.
This is my other tirade. This is what's wrong with high school education. Yeah. But this is good. This is a good attempt, but it doesn't tell the whole story. Because how often in life do we find ourselves just being sponges for information?
We should always be.
Well, but different. I mean a non-responsive sponge, where you don't have a chance to do anything but receive messages. I mean, maybe if you were a computer, you would just receive messages. But even then, you're sending some of your own. So this is a good start. kind of incomplete. So 7 years later, we got something called the interactive model, which just really added one important thing called feedback. And as a definition for you, feedback is a response to a message. It's also the thing that happens if you hold your guitar too close to an amp. But this feedback is a response to a message. Now, hey, that's a minor addition, but it's a pretty big deal. You guys are always sending messages, whether you even know it or not. So you may think that, hey, this is a classroom setting. We got a teacher who's just talking to us. This is linear. Sender, message, and you're all receivers. Well, you're all sending messages of your own in the form of feedback. Not always verbal, but a lot of nonverbal stuff as well. The fact that you are nodding, or giving me eye contact, or writing notes down on your notepad, that all tells me that you're paying attention. So that's a message of its own. In fact, sometimes if we purposefully try to not send messages, we are still sending a message by not sending messages. Hold on. Confusing? Think about it this way. You ever gotten those text messages from an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend? And you decide, God, not again. Okay, the only thing I'm going to do here is just ignore it. Just ignore it. I'm not going to write back. Hopefully they get the hint and just leave me alone. And so by not sending any messages at all, you're sending a message of don't bother, right? We're always sending messages. But what do you say?
I don't want to talk to you.
Oh, yeah. And that's a message, right? Yeah, totally. Then we get something called the transactional model of communication, and I don't necessarily need you guys, you don't need to draw this thing at all. Just do know that it introduced the concept that communication changes over time. And I think this is fairly accurate. Think about it this way. Guy and a girl, or whatever type of situation it is, people on a first date. What is your communication like when you are just hanging out with somebody for the first time?
Lies. Lies.
It's like, what are you talking about on a first date?
Intense.
Huh?
Said it's intense.
It is intense. It's stressful. I remember my first date, man, I was 17 years old, and I took this girl to a movie and McDonald's.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. Real romantic, this guy.
Is there any other way
Movie
to do
and
it?
McDonald's, and I was so nervous and paranoid the night before. I kept thinking, what if I run out of things to say? Oh, I can't let that happen.
That's what
I
the
don't want
movie's
any
for.
awkward silence. But, oh, shoot, am I going to think of anything to say on the spot? How do I do this? So I wrote down a talking points list.
Nice.
I could talk about this. Ooh, and that could bring up this. And I wrote out this entire list of things to talk about and committed that to memory. So then when I was sitting at McDonald's, I never ran out of things to say.
Did it work?
I probably talked too much. I don't know. I was kind of in a haze. I don't remember it. But does this ring a bell for anybody? Am I the only one that's done this?
Probably, yes.
Yes. Well,
Hey, is that your unique thing?
that might be my unique thing. Very good. All right, Susan, thanks for bailing me out. I forgot I hadn't done that yet. So you take that same couple who was out on a first date where the conversation is very surface level, very rigid, where you are trying to avoid silence at all costs, but you have nothing to say.
Sounds
So
like
you-
marriage.
Huh?
Sounds like marriage.
Well, marriage can change things a little bit. So you take that couple,
Marriage, you
fast
stop having
forward
to make
them
stuff
40
up.
years. What's the communication like 40 years later? Maybe non-existent.
Make me a
In
sandwich.
fact, silences might not be a bad thing. Silences might be a blessing. And you're like, would you please just shut it? Don't want to listen. Can I get some silence around here, please? My grandparents, or both of my grandfathers, had this trick that they would do. They both wore hearing aids. And when my grandmas were chewing on them too much, they just turned them off. Didn't have to listen. They took all silence. They didn't care that there was silence. They loved it. So communication does change over time. I believe that, and that's what this model tries to explain. All right, I've got 3 questions for you guys before we leave here. And just for a moment, just sit and enjoy this nice picture. Meditate. It's your well-being. Nice cloudy question mark. Boy, it looks a lot better than outside, doesn't it? Question number 1. Is communication always intentional? No. I see people shaking their heads no. Who wants to say yes? There's no right or wrong here.
Yeah. Everything has a meaning.
No.
Everything you do is like always intended for something. You're not doing anything for nothing. Otherwise, you just sit down and do nothing, which is still saying something.
That's right. I think you've taken the question in just a little bit of a different direction than I had intended it, but that's okay. Maybe it wasn't all that clear. If you said no, then I would probably tend to agree with you on this, because we are always communicating whether we want to or not. How many of you follow poker or watch it every now and then? If you do, you'll recognize this guy, Doyle Brunson. He's perhaps one of the most decorated and most old of all poker players. The guy's won the world series of poker I don't know how many times. He's good. And what he'll tell you, and what every other professional poker player will tell you, is that it doesn't matter what kind of cards you have. The cards are irrelevant. You are basically tested of being... rewind. You are being tested of how good of a nonverbal communication reader you are. These poker players sit around and they don't care what their cards are. They are analyzing the other players at the table. And if they see certain signs, they will know that this player's got a great hand.
They're called tells.
The tells, yeah. And we're always giving stuff away. So people come up with this idea of poker face. Gotta have a poker face. And that's where you get rid of all of your expressions and emotion. So no matter what happens to you, be it good, bad, or horrible, you sit around and do this.
Some of them wear sunglasses.
Yeah, and I'll talk about why. But yeah, if a good poker player were to win the $200 million lottery and they had their poker face on, someone would say, "You just won the lottery." Aren't you excited? Because what they're trying to do is get rid of all expressions. Doesn't always work though, because anything that has eyeballs in the animal kingdom is subject to a biological giveaway. When we get excited about something, we get this burst of a chemical called adrenaline that rushes through our body. Do you know what it does to your eyes? Dilates them. Sometimes a lot, sometimes a little. But it doesn't take much for a professional poker player to be able to tell if your eyes have dilated even a little bit. And when they see that, it means that person got a good hand. So unless yours is also good, better just tuck that one and play the next hand. This is why the poker players wear the dark sunglasses. It's not just for looks. They're not sitting around the table saying, "Gosh, how can I look more cool as I'm playing poker?" No, it's so they can hide their eyeballs. They don't want that giveaway to happen. A lot of drug people get dilated eyes. That's synthetically induced adrenaline, though. We're talking about the natural adrenaline for purposes of this class. Question number 2. Is communication ever exact?
I think it can be.
You think it can be? Who said? Mike, you say that? What do you think?
I think it can be if the receiving person, I don't know, is on like the same level as you, or whatever.
Perhaps, maybe, if you're on the same page?
Yeah.
Sure. I see another hand up over here. No? Okay. Here's the interesting thing about this question. I had a textbook once upon a time that said, no, communication is never exact. In fact, you would have the word exact with a circle and a red line through it. No. They say, no, communication is never exact because we are human beings and we start interpreting messages. And when we start interpreting things, forget about it. We're changing messages all over the place. That's what a textbook said. And this is one instance where I would have to disagree with the textbooks. You don't always have to agree with what's in your books. Just because you paid $80 for it doesn't mean it's always right. My dad is a civil engineer. He designs bridges. So he works in math all the time. And he would say that if there is a form of exact communication, it is math. Very, very exact and precise. By the way, don't you just love this picture of pi? The pi symbol carved into a pie. You start getting good and advanced enough at math, and you start using equations that have no numbers in them. We like to think of math being all numbers. Well, really advanced math has no numbers. It's just a bunch of symbols. But when my dad does calculations and sends off plans to builders and designers, he gives them exact instructions. And it's all based off of math. So is this an exact form of communication? Sure, my dad would say yes anyways. You could argue that if you wanted to. But anyways, just to show you that there's always a kink to throw your way. Last question. Is more communication always better?
No.
Wow. No? Who says no? Raise your hand. Be proud of it. Oh gosh, that's a lot of the ladies in the class are saying no. You guys need to talk to every ex-girlfriend I've ever had. Because they always say, oh, we just don't communicate enough. We still beating heart. We need more communication. We're a communication breakdown. It's killing us. To which I would respond in the words of my dear friend Elvis Presley, who once upon a time said, maybe what we need is a little less conversation and a little more action. So saith the king. Very good. My friends, thank you so much for your time today.
I said it's useless to say. So I live my life in dreams of yesterday. Oh, those